Welcome to Introduction to Back Class. My name is Joanne Piscini, and I'm a physical therapist assistant here at Beaver Medical Group. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is alignment of the spine. So let's take a look at the whole spine. And you notice that it has a gentle indentation here, pops out here, and drops back in here. But none of the curves are excessive, because what you're looking for is a vertical column. When you keep your back in that position, there's even pressure coming down over the discs. There's no irregular forces being applied to any portion of the facets. So let's take a look at the cervical spine. In the cervical spine, you can see that it's just like a stack of pancakes. They're all kind of flat. And that's because they were created for rotation. So we keep everything vertical, then you get better rotation from right to left. Then when you look at the thoracic spine, and this is the part that pops out, it's kind of the convex portion of the spine. They're kind of oriented in this fashion, which creates a better side bend when you side bend from right to left. So there was a function for every section, and if we observe the function and we observe this vertical stacking, we feel less pain. Let's look at the lumbar spine. So that drops in just a little bit there, and that's made for flexion and extension of the spine. The shoulders should be flat and flush on your back. Slim here, he's kind of in a poor posture. He's kind of rounded like this. His shoulder blades are slightly flared. It would be better if this was positioned a little more flat and flush. And you could imagine what would happen if he was. The shoulders would be back a little more, right? And so that's what we're looking for. If we keep our shoulders forward, what's going to happen is we're going to increase the kyphotic curve, the one that we said popped out. It's going to be more excessive. Shoulders are going to roll forward, and that's going to have an adaptive shortening right here in the front. All your muscles here, your pectoral muscles, and even your neck muscles are going to tighten a little bit here. And when we stay in this position, poor posture, let's say we've done this for 20 years or maybe even less. It doesn't take that long for muscles to change. It's going to be hard to get back. We're going to have a pull, and we could possibly end up with headaches, cluster headaches here. We can end up with tightness in the neck. So we want proper wear. We want to have good alignment of the shoulder blades, which in turn is going to allow everything to be in their neutral position. So now the pelvis, that's the last alignment. The pelvis is the base of your spine, and this is the strongest part of our body, right through your hips. It's like the foundation of the house. So we want this to be level. Quite often there's a problem here with many people, and that's a pelvic rotation. And it can be caused by just a tightness of muscle. Let's say, for example, let's turn to the front again. I keep turning him around, but I need you to see. Let's look at the red paint on him. So this is called the vertebral body. Then you see the red paint there. The transverse processes are there. And this is where a long muscle called iliopsoas originates. And then here, where the blue paint is, that is where the hip flexor attaches. If this muscle is tight, it can pull the pelvis in a forward position. And what happens is you will appear as a person with a longer leg. Imagine this, if this leg was longer and I would be stepping on it, it would be almost like I'm vaulting and falling. A lot of compaction, a lot of pressure right there. We said that muscles adaptively shorten. You might be more prone to find this in someone who sits a lot. Because they're sitting like this muscle is having a chance to adapt to that position. And conversely, on the back of the skeleton, we can also get a posterior tilt. Here where the red paint occurs is where the hamstrings originate, and they insert down here in the blue paint below the knee. If that happens, a posterior rotation occurs. So pulling the pelvis back, and what you end up with is a short leg, okay? Neither one of them is optimum. We got to have neutral alignment, and that's what we're here to help you to achieve. And so with this class, we're going to find an equilibrium between the pulling forces and the overstretched forces. So we need to get everything back to neutral. So let's talk about the muscles of the core. We'll just briefly talk about them. On the top you have your diaphragm. In the back you have multifidus, you have internal obliques and transverse abdominis, your own natural abdominal corset. On the bottom you have the pelvic floor. Okay, so what we now have is a can. So if you stood on a can right in the center, that would be a pretty strong surface. But if you constantly stepped on the back of that, it might give, right? It'd tip or bend, it'll tweak a little bit. So what we need to do is find a balance. We want to align you so that you are perfectly stacked. So let's call the pelvis a bowl. Let's call the intestine spaghetti. And let's call the rib cage the lid on the pot of spaghetti. So now you have this whole can of muscles that we're referring to as spaghetti, but you have a compacted, closed unit, everything stacked. So when that happens, you're getting pressure that's coming around through the transverse abdominis. You're getting automatic core engagement. As that pressure pushes down through gravity, because you're perfectly aligned, the pelvic floor will also pull in. So you're having good alignment of your muscles and better action of your muscles. Leverage is something that affects our back immensely. So what I want to talk about is a study. It really is impressive. People at Oklahoma State University volunteered for this study. They were asked if they would be able to put monitors on their back, which would tell how much force was being expressed on their joints and on their back. So all they had to do was bend over once, kind of an inverted U, to pick up 10 pounds off the floor. The people that were chosen for the study, their torso from hips to head weighed about 105 pounds. So they weren't really big people, but they bent over and picked this up, and you realize that there was 1,150 pounds of force on their back, and that's just from picking up 10 pounds once. And I think that's the thing that we don't realize it's happening, is that we're picking up more than 10 pounds, and we're not picking it up just once. So if we have bad body mechanics, it's no wonder that we have back pain. I wanted to see if you'll help me with this, because this is a demonstration to prove to you about how leverage affects your back. It's nice when people tell you facts and things, but kind of even better when you feel it yourself. So I'd like to hand you this weight and have you hold it at your chest. And then I'd like you to take it out and hold it here and see if you notice any difference.
It's a lot harder when you hold it in.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, that's my point. So that 2-pound weight that you were lifting becomes 10 pounds at arm's length. So really when we're doing our tasks every day, like let's say we had a gallon of water or tea, and we're opening our refrigerator and we just put it in at arm's length. So then we have 40 pounds of force coming down through each level of our spine. So it's just things like that that make a big difference. This is a bowling ball that weighs about 8 pounds, and this demonstration is just to show you how leverage has an effect on your neck. And it seems that whatever our head does, the rest of our body follows through. As soon as our head starts to pitch forward, then our shoulders round, our back rounds, and we kind of lose all those natural curves in our spine that we're supposed to maintain. So we lose our cervical lordosis, we lose our thoracic kyphosis, and we no longer have a lordosis in our low back either. So we want to keep our head just stacked on our spine. And the reason is the leverage, and you'll see right now. So this 8-pound bowling ball really helps to demonstrate it. So if I put my hand here, then when you'll put your hand beneath it, you'll get the opportunity to feel what leverage does. That 8-pound bowling ball didn't really feel that heavy when it was here, but really there's a lot more strain. I'm having to use a lot more strength in my arm to hold it. And just think of your poor muscles all day long are holding your head into position. It's because they're overworked. So simply you can see how this works. Just don't bump yourself in the head or anything, and go ahead and give it a try. See how much force is applied when the leverage is increased. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
And it probably wasn't as easy to tell with that 2-pound weight that you did, that you picked up, but with this you can really see the difference. So I'm going to show you a different way of moving. Most of the time when people move, we twist. If we want something here, we twist or we reach like this. But if we're supposed to keep our spine in neutral position, there's a better way of doing it. We can do something called a weight shift. Slightly turn out your toes and just glide over your knee. And here's another way. You keep your rib cage over your pelvis and just move your feet. If we just moved our feet a little more, rather than standing in one spot and reaching out, we'd save ourselves a lot of pain. A hip hinge is just moving from the hip, keeping the vertical post aligned with the head on top, and then just moving from the hip. And a hip hinge is quite easy to do. You just relax your knees and then move back from the hip. And what it's used for is for light things, picking up things from the desk, putting your cup of coffee down, reaching a paper, something light, something that's just out of your reach. Now if it's something that's heavier, we wouldn't want to use that technique. We could use what's called the functional squat. Functional squat still keeps some of the same ideas in play, and that is that the vertical post is still straight, your spine is still straight, maintaining those gentle curves, and then you simply come down further. So you'd have to have strong legs. You'll bend down from your hips, keeping your back straight, pick up whatever it is that you have, bring it in close, and then use your legs to come up. So if we did this practice, rather than bending from our back, two things that are great would be happening. First of all, you'd be strengthening your legs. The second thing that would be happening is that you're not using that overused spot any longer. You've now decided to use a different part of your body and let the other part rest, and that's exactly what it needs. It needs to heal. So when you have back pain, you may find that it's really hard to move around in bed. It's not comfortable. So if you sit at the edge of your bed, and what you need to do is bring your shoulder and head down at the same time that you're bringing your legs up, okay? And then you're going to roll onto your back, keeping your shoulder and hip in alignment. So you just roll down, and then keeping things kind of tight with your abs here in the center, your core, of course. Roll onto your back, roll onto your side. And then push, roll back. And then to get up, I use momentum, roll to the side, push and drop, and you just pop up. Learn this log roll. It's going to help conserve your energy, and it's going to help maintain the discs. So the last counterbalance that I wanted to show you, which is most important, is the golfer's lift, and it's for picking up something very light. So I would reach out with my right arm and lift my left leg as high as I could to kind of counterbalance. For example, to pick up something from the dishwasher, maybe your newspaper, or something light. The golfer's lift, just disconnect with that foot. When we sit, your feet should be flat. They should be supporting your whole body. You shouldn't be sitting on your sacrum. You should be sitting on your ischial tuberosities. The ischial tuberosities are where the hamstrings insert. We call them our sits bones right here. So basically, if you're not sitting on these, you're sitting more on the flat portion of your pelvis. If you're sitting forward, you're on the flat portion, and this actually is kind of like holding you forward. But most of the time, people roll back. This is a bad, poor posture. You've lost your lumbar lordosis, and that's what we want to maintain. So we have to keep that at all times because it allows even pressure coming down on each vertebral disc. This is called active sitting. Active sitting requires some strength. Your abdominal muscles are working to help hold you up. You're consciously keeping your shoulders back. Your head is up and your chin is tucked, and this all takes muscle strength. But at some point in the day, we're going to get tired. We're going to have to push ourselves back into our chair, and that's when you may want to relax a little more. But still, even when you're relaxing, we don't want you to lose that lumbar curve. So we ask if you could put a towel or something in here to hold and maintain the pelvis up. And then we talked about the hip hinge, the standing hip hinge. I showed you how to do that. There's also a seated hip hinge. Instead of rounding your back and reaching for something, once again beating up that same portion, never letting it heal, we just bend from the hips and then push with our feet down through the floor and push ourselves back. And we're not using our mover muscles here in the lumbar spine to help bring our torso and our head upright. We just use our leg muscles. So just making simple changes like that help a lot. I want to teach you different ways of doing everyday tasks. So with this dowel, we're going to imagine it's a broom, okay? My mother personally swept like this, kind of twisting, things like that, or standing and just really reaching out. All we're going to do is just do a little pivoting motion and walk. So you get a lot more leg work, and really that's what this all boils down to, is a lot more leg work. That would also pertain to like raking. You would want to put a little body motion in, kind of like a fencing move, and not really reaching out with the rake far away, just keeping it in close. Here's a good one, shoveling. Put the shovel in to your hip so that you have support here, and then instead of throwing it over your shoulder, you've seen people do that, dig and throw over the shoulder, that's twisting, that's that coupled motion that's going to cause a lot of wear and tear on your back. You can do something like a basketball pivot, so holding it here and just kind of pivoting forward and then dumping like that. Then vacuuming, just move your legs a lot, just walk with the vacuum. You don't have to move your arms as much, but you will move your legs a lot more, okay? And make sure that if you are trying to get into a hard space, that you'll hip hinge. So I can run the vacuum under here by doing a hip hinge. I hope the techniques that you've learned here today you can incorporate into your life, and I hope Slim and I have been some help to you today.